Hello friends, it's Kristie Marcotte. I hope everyone had a peaceful and safe holiday season. I got to enjoy Christmas with my family and it was just so nice to have some quiet downtime, and I did sneak in a little bit of crafting time. So today I am sharing my 10 cards from one kit using January 2019 Love From Lizi kit. This is the Rainbow Wishes kit, and it's so bright and cheerful, which is just perfect because it's still pretty gloomy here in Washington. For card number 1, I used one of the rainbow photo frames, and then for the background behind that photo frame, I just have some white cardstock, and I went and heat embossed some of the Rainbow Wishes embossing powder and it has the little stars that are falling like beneath the cloud. And I'm just going to put some score tape on the back of that frame just to make sure it holds nice and firm onto the card. And then I'll just put that white cardstock behind it, so now you can see, and it's just a real subtle coloring with the embossing powder, but if you tilt it in the light, it has this really pretty kind of an iridescent rainbow look to it. So it doesn't really catch on the film here, but it turned out really lovely. And so now below those little falling stars, I used the pot of gold, just the pot of gold die, and then cut out a bunch of little gold coins. And for the gold coins, I used some of this yellow holographic paper. So that's one of the add-ons, and it's really pretty. So once again, if you turn this card in the light, you can just see all these different colors reflecting there. So I'm just going to glue a whole bunch of coins right there on the top of the opening of the pot. And if I hadn't already glued down that photo frame, I wouldn't have had to cut the bottom part of the pot off. I could have just covered it up with the frame, but since I had already glued that down, I just trimmed off the bottom so that it was nice and even in the little window there. So now I'm going to stamp one of the sentiments, and since I'm not always a really great stamper, I like to pull out my mini MISTI just to make sure I can ink it up again if it wasn't a great clear image to start with. So I use the Never Stop Chasing Rainbow sentiment, and then I'm just going to put that sentiment across the bottom of the card, and then I'll just trim off that little excess on each of the sides there. And then I pulled out these beautiful peel-offs. So these are holographic peel-offs, and they are just gorgeous. So once again, you are not going to see it until you actually hold them in your hand. They're just so beautiful the way the light hits them. So I just put one of the strips above and below that sentiment strip, and then I put the card front onto a card base, and then just a final little touch, I'm using some of these little tiny gems that come in the kit. And these are really tiny. They were actually hard to hold, so I did pull out my little pickup tool to try to move them around a little bit. And the gems do have some adhesive on the back of them, but I like to make sure they stay in place. So I just used a little more liquid adhesive, and that is card number 1. So moving on to card number 2. So I'm using a sketch from Freshly Made Sketches number 368. And this is a fun sketch because you can combine a few different pattern papers together on one card. So for the background, I use this blue, it's like a light blue pattern paper that has a white splatter, and it looks like a paint splatter on it. And then I chose some of the busier patterns for those rectangular pieces. And for the image on this card, I'm using the add-on stamp set. This is Chasing Rainbows. And it has a smaller version of the little cloud and then the little rain hanging below. So for this one, I am using the raindrops versus the little stars like I used in the previous card. So again, I'm using my mini MISTI just to make sure I get everything lined up nice and I get a nice stamped image. And then I just wanted to add a little bit of blue coloring to the cloud, just so it wasn't white stamped on white paper. And then I just added a few to those little raindrops that are sprinkling down from the cloud. And I'll just layer that onto a little scalloped oval. And then for the sentiment, I pulled out the "When it rains, look for rainbows." And so again, I'm going to use my mini Misty to get a good impression, and I'm just putting it in the lower corner. So the one nice thing about using that real light pattern paper as the background is you can still stamp a sentiment and it shows really well. So I wanted my cloud to sort of be anchored on the card. So I pulled out this white ribbon that kind of has a gold trim on the edges of it, and I'm going to put it across the middle of the card. And the ribbon's pretty thin, so I decided to use 2 pieces side by side. And to adhere it in place, I just use a piece of score tape. And then I'll wrap the ends of it around that card front and then hold that in place with some more score tape. And then I'm just going to add some foam dimensional tape to the back of that oval image. Just trying to figure out where I wanted to place it. And now I'll go ahead and put some adhesive on the back of that card front and adhere it to my card base. And then just one little last touch, I used a piece of this holographic cardstock. So again, this is an add-on. You can buy it singly by the sheet. And I'm just putting a little banner in that upper right-hand corner. So again, when you tilt that card around, the rainbow reflection on that banner is just really pretty. So now I'm on to card number 3. So I'm using Freshly Made Sketches number 361. And even though this kit has a rainbow of colors, you can still easily just choose one of the colors and make a card. So I was excited that there's pink in this kit, and I decided to make basically just a pink card. And I will admit this is my favorite card out of all of them. So for this rectangular piece on the sketch, I decided to go and use a whole bunch of the holographic peel-offs. And I did speed up this part quite a bit because this took me a long time. So I'm using the largest size of the peel-off, and I'm just putting one piece after another at an angle, and I just keep continuing to go on and on until I fill this whole pink piece with holographic peel-offs. And so this is why you keep all these little tiny pieces, because sometimes you can use those tiny little pieces. So now all those little edges, I'm just going to trim off those extra little bits. And they kind of fly everywhere. And I'm even using like a junkier pair of scissors because I didn't want to get all those little pieces on my nice pink scissors. So now that piece is all finished and it's just beautiful. So I'm just going to layer it on some white cardstock. And then we'll go ahead and put that card front onto the card base. And then overall this card is fairly simple. It just took a long time to add all of those peel-offs. But it was totally worth it. So now for a sentiment, I'm just going to cut this a little banner. And then I just chose a pretty useful sentiment. It says happy birthday. And this is part of that add-on stamp set. So I'm just going to emboss it using some of Love From Lizi's embossing powder. And this is the silver dollar color. And you can purchase all of her embossing powders separately. So even if you didn't ever get the kit that it came in, she sells them all individually, and they're really nice embossing powders. So I just want that to pop up just a little bit, so I'm adding just a layer of that pink cardstock. And all of the cardstock that I'm using other than the white and the black is from my stash. And I actually am only using scraps because I didn't use a ton of cardstock this time. So then just one final touch, I cut out some of these small stitch circles and I'm just putting in that upper left hand corner. And then I also added just a couple of these little pink gems. So I'm just putting one on each side of that sentiment. So that is card number 3. I tried to get a real nice close-up picture so you could see all those beautiful colors in the holographic peel-offs. So now on to card number 4. I'm using sketch number 412 from MFT. The background paper is some of this yellow paper with white polka dots, and I believe this is some of the 8x8 paper. So the kit comes with 12 sheets of 8x8 pattern paper as well as 12 sheets of 6x6 pattern paper, and it's all the same design, just the 6x6 is a smaller scale. So it's kind of nice to have that little variety, and it's all beautiful paper, lots of rainbows. So the paper behind these thin rectangular pieces is some more of the specialty add-on paper. This is the red holographic paper, and I just love the pretty shine that it provides. So now when I'm trying to lay out these 4 rectangular pieces, I want to get them as evenly spaced as possible. So I always start with the outer 2 and then work my way in. And then there's this little thin strip on that right hand side on the sketch, so I just used one of the yellow peel-offs for that. And then a lot of my cards I do like to add just that thin piece of pattern paper and just line it on the inside of the card. It's usually just a real small scrap that I probably wouldn't use otherwise, so it's always nice to add just a little something on the inside of the cards. And then the sentiment is from the sticker sheet, and I just added some cardstock layers just to pop it up a little bit. And since the cardstock, the rectangular pieces with that holographic paper adds a little extra dimension, I added just some of those real thin foam squares just on the left side of that sentiment square, just so it all lay nice and even. And then I cut a few little banners for that upper corner, and then just a little final touch, I'm just adding some of these little pearls, just putting 5 of them on the side of the sentiment. So that is card number 4. So now I'm on to card number 5. So I went ahead and used a stitched rectangular die and cut out all of the papers, and I put the white cardstock underneath of this blue pattern paper just to add some more thickness to it. And then I used the cloud die that comes in the kit and cut out the opening there for the cloud. And then using my mini MISTI, I'm just lining up some more of the little star rain so that it'll come right down underneath the cloud. And then I want to emboss that, so I'm using some of the Oyster Pearl embossing powder. So once again, this is just going to be a really subtle look, but it has a really lovely pearlescent look to it. And overall, I wanted to keep this card sort of on the softer color side. So now I also want to add a sentiment, so I'm going to put it in the lower right hand corner. And I'm going to emboss that one as well, this time using some more of the silver dollar embossing powder. And I did use some of the anti-static powder before embossing, just so I don't have any extra little stray pieces around. So now I'll just use my heat gun and emboss that, and it's just a really lovely silver shine. So now I'm going to get ready to assemble this card front so I can make a shaker card. So I cut a piece of acetate, and I'm just putting that right behind the opening of the cloud. And now I have my foam dimensional tape, and I just fold that in half so I can have the double layers and only have to cut out all the pieces once. And I'm just going to cover that whole card front because I don't want any of the paper to kind of sag in the middle. So I'd rather just cover it completely so it has a nice solid feel to it. So once I've decided where I'm going to place that on my card, I went and grabbed this lovely sequin mix, and I'm just using my little Nuvo spoon to scoop some of that out. But no matter what, you still get a lot of static. So some of those little sequins had already jumped up while I was lining up the top part with the card base. So once I get those all in place, I had to tuck a couple of them back in there. I just pressed that foam dimension tape really tight so no more will sneak out now. And then I'll just put that card front onto a white cardstock card base. And then I just wanted to add a few little embellishments. So I used some white glitter paper and cut out these little tiny stars. And I believe the glitter paper was from a previous Love from Lizi kit. I always keep any of the little scraps, especially of the specialty paper, because you never know when just a little piece is all you need. So this is card number 5. So now I'm on to card number 6. So I used Reverse Confetti sketch number 56. And I decided for this card I wanted a lot of color. So I used the rainbow pattern paper for the background, and I toned it down just a little bit with this pink strip on the side. And I did go ahead and layer all of it in some black cardstock, and there is a piece that is included in the kit. And then for my sentiment, I cut out a stitched circle and then also a little scalloped circle to go behind that. And I used one of the sticker sentiments, so it's this little hello on a semicircle. And I put that on the top, and then I'm going to put friend below it using the glitter alphabet stickers that come in the kit. So I know there's a lot of crafters that have this real nice and perfect way to lay out their letters when they're making words with stickers, but I kind of just eyeball it. I usually start with the first letter and the last letter, and if they don't fit I can just move a couple of them around a little bit, but I think I got them lined up pretty well. So I'll go ahead and put that circle onto the scallop circle, and I did use one of the really thin peel-offs to put a little border between the hello and the friend. And then I also added just that real small piece of the silver glitter paper just to go behind the sentiment. And Lizi's glitter paper is really nice. It doesn't shed, but I do want to mention that when you cut it, some of the pieces do come off. Not like a big glitter mess, but a little bit. So just make note of it if you are one that donates cards to hospitals, places that can't have that glitter. So I used some more of the holographic rainbow cardstock to cut out these small circles, and I just put a small piece of foam dimensional tape underneath those, and that is card number 6. So now I'm on to card number 7. I'm using sketch number 505 from Mojo Monday. So like my previous pink card, I decided to make a mostly purple card this time. So for the background paper, this is some of this purple holographic cardstock. So this is some of the specialty add-on cardstock. And then I just used this thinner strip of purple paper with these little white stars all over it. And then just to line that purple pattern paper, I just used a couple strips of the holographic peel-offs. And then I also used some of this specialty cardstock, this really lovely purple glitter cardstock, to make that little banner on the right hand side. So instead of the circle element on the sketch, I'm using one of these tags that's included in the kit. So this is the star, and it matches the pattern paper just perfectly. So this is that blue paper with that sort of like a white paint splatter look on it. And I went ahead and stamped in black the sentiment, but I wanted to add some more of that really pretty embossing powder. So this is that rainbow wishes. So when the light hits it just right, it has kind of a rainbow look to it. So just go ahead and heat emboss that. And again, you're not going to really see the full effect of that embossing powder on the video, but in person it's just beautiful. So then with the tag, I didn't want any of the ribbon that's in the kit. Most of the ribbon's a little on the wider side. So I just pulled a small piece of purple twine from my craft room, and I just tied a little bow on the top where the hole is punched out. And then after I fuss with that bow just a little bit more, I'm just going to put some foam and dimensional tape on the back of that star just to pop it up just a little bit. So I like how this card is mostly purple, but that blue star just coordinates beautifully with it. And then just one final little touch, I'm using some of the purple gems. So I just put 3 of them in the upper corner, and they do match really well with that holographic paper, but you can still see the gems on there, and I think it just adds a nice subtle touch. So that is card number 7. So now I'm on to card number 8. I'm using Operation Write Home Sketch number 211. And if you are interested in any of the sketches that I use in this video, I do share all of them over on my coordinating blog post, and that link is in the description box below. So for the background, I used some of this orange pattern paper and then a little bit of the rainbow holographic paper for that strip behind the circle. And then instead of those 2 little strips on the side, I decided to use some of this really fun rainbow rickrack ribbon. So now you can see I didn't get my card front lined up very well onto my card base, so I had to pull that up and try it again, and then I still had a little piece that I had to trim there. So now to adhere this ribbon onto the card, I'm using some of the Ranger Multimedia Matte. I just want to make sure that that stays down and in place. And usually I tuck the ends of my ribbon underneath, but this ribbon is a little bit thicker, so I did decide to cut it at the ends, and it doesn't seem like it would fray too easily, so I think that'll work out just fine. And then to match with that rainbow rickrack ribbon, I'm using one of these little mini envelopes that has the rainbow pattern on it. And then I just cut a small piece of yellow cardstock to add the note on the inside. And these little envelopes have a small piece of foam dimension on the back, so I did go ahead and peel that off because I wanted it all to be flat instead. And then I just used a very simple sentiment with some of the rainbow glitter stickers. And then just a few little finishing touches, I used some of these orange pearls. And so that is card number 8. So now I'm on to card number 9. So I'm using one of the heart wood pieces that comes in the kit. So there are 2 of them. One doesn't have a sentiment, and then one has the with love sentiment. So this is the plain one, and I'm just using some white ink and just kind of smushing it all around so I can have a nice white heart instead of the wood color. And it did take a while to dry, so I did have to use a heat embossing gun just to speed that drying process up just a little bit. And so then I got this crazy idea that I wanted to use all of this fun bling that comes in the kit and make this rainbow going across the heart. So I'm only using the gems. I didn't pull out any of the pearls. But there's a lot of bling in this kit, and since these are nice and tiny, it was pretty easy to just make this little rainbow arc on the heart. So I just used some liquid adhesive, and I had first drawn the starting line with a pencil, and then just one color at a time, I'm just putting all of that little bling down, and then I'll add another layer of glue and then start with the next color. And so I did speed this up quite a bit because this took me a really long time, and I wasn't sure if I was actually going to have enough bling because I hadn't planned out this card at the beginning, and I've already used some of the colors. But it actually worked out perfect, and I originally wanted to add the pink, and that's why I have the pink out there, but I thought it would be a little too thick, so I did exclude using any of the pink colors. So now that my heart is all dry, I can go ahead and start on the card. So I'm using sketch number 416 from MFT. And I still have some more of this blue pattern paper for the background. So I'm using that, and then I decided I hadn't used the stencil yet. So there's this lovely cloud stencil that comes in the kit that has all of these different like cloud shapes and then the edges of the cloud. And I will admit I don't use stencils a whole lot, but this stencil is so easy to use. It was just really simple to make a real fluffy looking cloud background. So I just used some distress ink and then just did little pieces here and there just to give it some different dimension, and I really like how it turned out. And this blue cardstock is just a scrap that I have in my craft room because I tend to keep any of the larger pieces of cardstock. So first I'm going to add the sentiment, so I'm using the same one again. When it rains, look for rainbows. Kind of goes perfect with my little rainbow I built on the heart there. And again, just using my mini Misty to make sure I get a nice solid impression. And now I'll go ahead and start assembling this card. So since I will be placing that heart in the same spot as in the sketch, it's kind of a white against white, so I wanted a little bit of color or just something to break up the white against white. So I pulled out 3 of the holographic peel-offs just to put behind that heart. It also adds a little extra shine to the card, which is always fun. So now when I'm placing these 2 pieces onto that blue cardstock, I realized I didn't line or add enough of the edge to the top where the clouds are. So I just peeled that off and add a little more adhesive and then adhere it all down. And then before I adhere the heart onto the card, I'm just going to add the card front onto the card base using lots of adhesive, and I always trim any of that white card base off. I don't like it showing. And then I still felt like there was too much white against white, so I just used some of the leftover ink that was on my distress tool and just added just a little bit of blue around the edge of the heart. Just kind of gave it a little more dimension, and then add some adhesive to the back and adhere that heart right onto the card. So that is card number 9. So now I'm on to card number 10. So for this card, I didn't want to cut up any more of the full sheets of pattern paper. So instead I took all of the little partial pieces, and some of them I cut down a little smaller. They're all different widths, but I'm just going to sort of build the background using all of these different strips. So I also used a piece of the happy birthday ribbon, kind of put that on the lower third there, and then I'm just randomly adding different strips. And I realized I didn't quite have enough of the colors right away, so I did have to cut another one, and then I left way too small of a little strip on that very bottom corner. But it all worked out, and now I'm just going to trim from the back side all of the extras of those strips right off, except for the ribbon. I went around the ribbon because I'm going to tuck that around and add my score tape like I usually do with ribbon. So now I have all of those trimmed off. Now I'll just go ahead and tuck those little edges of the ribbon behind, hold them in place with my score tape, and then just to break up all of those different strips, I'm just adding the really small peel-off sticker in between all of the pattern paper. And then I used a little wider peel-off to go around the edges of that sentiment ribbon. I noticed that the real thin holographic peel-offs don't have quite as much shine as the 2 wider pieces, but it's still really pretty. It almost looks more silver with like a subtle polka dot pattern on it. So now I'm just going to go ahead and tuck all of the ends of the peel-offs behind, and I do have to pull off the backing on that score tape in order to get all of those ends tucked over. And so I hadn't decided what color cardstock I wanted to mat all of this onto yet, so I pulled out some of the little scrap pieces of this holographic rainbow paper and decided to go with the purple. So even though there's just like a little thin border that's going to go around the card front, it still adds a really pretty shine to it. So once I get that adhered down, I decided to add one of the icon stickers. So I just did one of these little glitter stars and put it above the happy birthday. And then a final touch, I pulled out the lovely sequin mix again, and I'm just adding a few on the lower corner as well as the upper corner. This is a really pretty sequin mix. It's like a clear iridescent color, so it goes with any of the papers in this kit. So that is card number 10. So at this point, I have 5 full sheets of 6x6 paper left. So I decided I was going to use all of the full sheets, at least of the 6x6 paper. So I'm not following a sketch at all. I just went and cut all of those patterns into background pieces. And I also cut some solid cardstock, or on some of them I used some of the specialty cardstock for that matted layer to go behind the pattern papers. And then to add just a little extra interest to each of the cards, I added 3 of the strips of peel-offs. So on some of the cards I used the yellow, and then the other cards I used the holographic peel-offs. And for most of the cards, I added an 1/8 of an inch matted cardstock layer, except for the yellow card. So because I used that holographic specialty paper, I wanted a little more of the shine to show. So on that one, I did use 1/4 of an inch instead. So after I add the peel-off stickers to each of the cards, I tuck the ends behind, and then I go ahead and adhere those to the matted cardstock layer. And then I also put that thin piece of the pattern paper that coordinates with the outside of the card. I put that on the inside of the card. This is just a real simple and easy design, especially if you really want to showcase some of the pattern papers. Now I could have easily done the same thing using the 8x8 pattern paper rather than just the 6x6 size. And the nice thing about 8x8 paper is you can actually get 2 of the card fronts from 1 sheet of paper. For this rainbow confetti looking paper, I decided to use the yellow peel-offs instead of the holographic peel-offs. I mean, I love the holographic peel-offs, but I wanted to make sure to use both of them. And I think with all of the different colors on this card, the yellow worked out nicely. And then for the final card in this group, I just did a green pattern paper, and then I used a darker green cardstock. So once again, all of the cardstock, other than the specialty cardstock, was just some scraps that's in my craft room. I have a stacking drawer set, and I just put all of my cardstock scraps in there. So really easy to use, and my daughter knows that she's always welcome to any of the papers that are in those drawers. So now I have the backgrounds all finished for 5 different cards, and now I can go ahead and add some different sentiments. So for this first one, I used another one of the tags. So this is a heart tag, and then I just cut another piece of small twine just from my stash, put a little bow on there, and then used one of the sentiment stickers on top of the heart. And then I'm going to just pop that up with some foam dimension. So very super easy card, and then the sentiment stickers have that little touch of glitter on there, so it adds a nice little extra sparkle. So for this next card, I have a stitched rectangle die, matted that with some of the red cardstock, and then I'm using this wood sentiment that's covered in this really pretty red glitter. So I'm just putting some adhesive on the back of that and adhering that right onto that die cut. And now for the next one, I'm using one of the hexagon stickers, and I already cut out the border layers. So I have a set of hexagon dies, so it actually was like the perfect size to layer all those together. And here's the next one. Again, I'm using some more of the stickers, and so this is a little triangle, and I just put it on some white cardstock, and then I'm just going to add a little border of the red cardstock. So I just adhered it down and just used my scissors to trim a thin border around there. And again, I'll pop that up with some of the foam dimensional tape. And sometimes I go a little crazy cutting all these teeny tiny little pieces. I just want to make sure that I get the whole thing covered. I always hate when one side sags down. So then the final card here, using another one of the sentiment stickers, and it has this really fun tag shape. So again, I put it on some white cardstock and then layered it again on some of the green cardstock, and then just using my scissors to trim it all out and then adhering that in place. And then of course, one final touch for all of them. I cut out some of these little tiny banners, and I'm just putting one in the upper corner on each of the cards using the same cardstock that I did for all of the layering. So those are my final cards, cards 11 through 15. And I realized after I finished these 5 cards, I never used the yellow glitter Nuvo drops that come in the kit. So for this yellow card, I did go ahead and add 3 little drops right underneath the sentiment. I made a total of 15 cards using Love from Lizi's January 2019 card kit. I'd love to know which one's your favorite. So here is everything I have left over from the kit. So I still have a full sheet of this gold satin paper. I ended up not using it, and I was using some of the add-on specialty paper instead. And I have some scraps of the pattern paper, and this is both the 8x8 and 6x6 sizes. And then I have 9 full sheets of the 8x8 paper. I don't have any sheets of the full sheets of the 6x6 paper left. I still have most of the alphabet stickers and a lot of the sentiment and icon stickers. One more of the little mini envelopes, 2 of the tags, 3 of the little rainbow picture frames, 1 more of the wood veneer hearts. I have a bunch of the bling, some of the pearls, and a little bit of the gems, not a lot of that left. I have the bottle of Nuvo drops and quite a bit of the sequin mix still left. I have most of the yellow peel-offs, but I'm getting a little low on the holographic peel-offs. These are amazing. And of course I have the stencil and the stamp set. And actually, this is one of the add-ons. And then, of course, the dies. And I still have quite a bit of the ribbon. I never even used the black or this white. So I still have quite a bit left over in the kit. So I know I did not finish all the pattern paper this time, but with it being December and the holidays, I decided to stop at 15 cards. When I recorded the voiceover, the Love from Lizi January 2019 card kit was still available to purchase. The monthly kits do sell out quickly though, so if you're wanting to purchase one, I suggest not waiting. The only way to guarantee receiving a kit is to sign up for a monthly subscription. Lizi really packs a lot into every kit, so you won't be disappointed. I have included links to the January kit along with all of the add-ons that I used in the video in the description box below. Be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel and make sure to turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any future videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.